Welcome to Game. Hello, Internet. Welcome to TSeries.
TSeries, wow. We are talking about today.
Mirror subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, don't fret. Let me your hand and two here on TSeries. This is the way you whatever is look right of a popular YouTube thing. No, I need to like. Oh,
That'd be so fun. Anyway.
So hey, hi, welcome back to this is episode 2 of our little podcast experiment, I guess you could say. So
GTLive, TSeries.
Last Tuesday we did they were looking at some issues that do care about, that you guys who watch, online content probably care about or are aware of or should be aware of. Things that are happening on YouTube, things that are happening in gaming or entertainment in general. And so, that's why we started this. We made the joke last week about it being called TSeries, GTLive, TEA, as in spilling the T, but now it's TSeries.
TEA series.
Indeed.
Oh, look at that.
So that's us.
So if you are consuming this like a podcast, maybe you are doing your homework, maybe you're on a commute somewhere, maybe you're just hanging out on your living room with your your eyes closed, you're relaxing, maybe you've got some nice hot beverage nearby.
I was actually going to say, Steph, what is your nice hot beverage of choice today? What are you drinking today, Stephanie?
Today we have a nice Twinings Darjeeling.
Oh.
It's Darjeeling is from a region in India called Darjeeling, and it's
great.
No, it's one of my favorite types of tea. One of my favorite tea regions. True story. When we visited India, I tried really hard.
Solidifying the connections between us and the real TSeries.
Oh, that's true. This makes us really legit. No, when we went to visit India, I really tried to engineer a way for us to go visit Darjeeling, because I wanted to be one of those people who goes to visit a tea plantation in the middle of nowhere and pick the leaves myself. I was totally that person. I own it. But it is really far out there. There's not much else in terms of major landmarks to go and see in some of those regions. So I didn't get to fulfill my dream this past time, but in the future, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, it's really hard to visit that part of the country because it's way out there.
We also hear you, for those watching on the stream, it's lagging. We know we're working on it. We're working to fix it.
Are we working on it?
We are working on
it. Chris confirms we are working on it.
Chris is working on it. And by working on it, it means getting everyone to hop off of the internet here.
It's crazy. No one else can be on the internet.
How stupid is that?
The live stream is no, all the bandwidth belong to us.
Man, remember the days where we didn't have to worry about that? That was great. I think it's Jason. I think it's Jason sucking up all the bandwidth.
Jason.
Are you sucking the bandwidth, buddy?
No, I'm using my phone as a hotspot.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Are you using maybe that's the problem, Jason. The live stream is running off of your phone as a hotspot.
No, the live stream.
Your data bill is gonna be brutal, my friend.
Did we dip? We're back in?
All right.
I've been in this whole time. I never left. I've been here the whole time. We would probably save on data if we didn't have any visuals whatsoever.
Ooh.
Chris is giving us a thumbs up as though the lag is gone.
Great.
I don't know
if that's back.
We're back.
We're back.
And maybe the lag is gone.
Audio
Who knows?
okay.
At
Hell
least
yeah.
for now.
We're good for
People say yay, fixed it. Okay,
great.
Awesome.
There it is.
Good work, Jason, Chris, and team.
And bad work, Spectrum Internet.
Yep. That's our internet service provider.
You disappoint me.
We're not giving you any yeah, good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, we got.
You know what, Jason?
Yeah.
You're giving us the approval that we fixed it is kind of like the lag. It happened 10 seconds after we had already talked about it on stream. You are the lag equivalent of the notification, buddy.
Jason is the lag.
Jason is human lag.
Oh. Hey guys, welcome to our podcasty experiment.
Is no one gonna ask what I'm drinking?
I was just about to do that, actually. I'm drinking Darjeeling. What are you drinking?
Unnamed carbonated beverage X again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Matty Patty Cola?
Matty Patty. Yeah, Matty Patty Cola. I don't know. It's a secret family recipe.
Ooh, that sounds unpleasant. It's really
Sounds sketchy.
oof.
Sounds like
All right.
we come from the old moonshiners
Right,
of Ohio.
I was gonna say, did you brew it yourself in the outhouse, or like how did you bootleg it across a border somewhere?
It's true. Risked my life getting it over here to California.
Well, we're both beveraged up, so
We are. We're both well hydrated now.
I think we should hop into talking about the tea of the day.
Yeah, the lag is over. It's time to start spilling some tea because this is TSeries after all. So, I think a good way to start off here is just a little personal thing that I need to get off my chest.
Ooh.
Which is our house is literally crumbling down around us as we speak.
It is. It is.
It is dire. It is a dire situation, ladies and gentlemen.
It's almost unlivable. Like Matthew and I haven't actually had this conversation yet, but I feel like at the end of the day we're very likely to have a conversation about like, hey, should we like go to a hotel or something so that us and our very small baby.
We're actually having this conversation right now,
Right now.
live on the stream.
Should we like go to a hotel so that us and our very small baby aren't like in the middle of a construction zone? Because that has happened to our house. So last week I think we mentioned a little bit about the fact that it's been raining more than usual in California. It's not record rains or anything. It's just like above average. It's above average rainfall for California after like 5 years of drought. And so anyone that ever had a crack anywhere in like their roof or their window or whatever is discovering it now, because now is the first time it's rained in literally years in California.
And so since we bought our house like 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
at this point, and it's the first time we're really seeing it rain, we're discovering all sorts of fun things. So it started off as like, wow, there seems to be a leak coming through this window, which has then prompted the floor to warp.
Yeah, so we had a window which let in some water, which ran down a wall, which ran across a floor, and then now
As we pull up the boards to the floor.
yeah, and by we I mean like we have real people who are licensed to do this who are helping us.
I wish actually I was involved, because I love home construction projects. It's actually like some of the best exercise you could ask for. It's
Yeah.
really satisfying at the end of it too, especially if you do it right.
It's the ultimate DIY.
It is.
It's a DIY that you can live in. I mean, that's amazing.
Save your Mod Podge or Mod Podge for your little shoe decorations, ladies and gentlemen. This is your 2x4s and your nail guns.
Matthew is great with construction, but this is a big project
Yeah,
at
and
this point.
and we also just don't have time. Like this is so
Yeah.
big and we don't have time. But anyway, so we've been ripping up the floor because the water came down through the window, then seeped under the floorboards because they weren't properly weather sealed.
Yeah.
And we're finding all sorts of bad construction decisions under there, as though the people who initially made the house were trying to skimp out on doing it properly, which is great. So we're finding out that there's a nice thin coating of water
Like
across
all
the
the
entirety
entire
of our
floor.
first floor, which would be bad enough, but then it exposes a problem over in the kitchen where, surprise, surprise, there's a whole other realm of water that no one knew existed before, and the wood is so bad underneath the layer of wood that we were walking on for the last 2 years. As we've pulled it up, it's like, oh wait, the plywood under here is literally decaying under our feet.
Yeah,
There's
it's
black
really
mold,
bad.
and now it's like, oh, behind the cabinetry.
Yeah, and for those of you who are concerned, don't worry. Like it, the nice thing about our house is that it's actually really well ventilated. So, in terms of like, is Skip okay? Is the baby okay? Like that is a part of the house that we can actually close off so that it's not like dangerous or hazardous to be like. Obviously, we wouldn't be in the same room, but like to be nearby. But it is the kind of thing where there's a lot of demolition going on. It's really loud. And then we have to bring in, obviously for everyone's safety for the long term, we have to bring in mold specialists to get everything out and treat the whole place.
The whole thing.
And so
Hazmat suits.
Hazmat
you
suits,
know,
the whole thing.
You know that you're in the middle of a serious issue and a
Yeah.
serious construction project when people have to come in wearing hazmat suits.
But so it's actually something we're documenting. We're probably going to do like at the very least some Instagram stories about it, because it's
because we got to earn that money back somehow.
I mean, God,
not that we earn money
you don't
off
get
of
money
Instagram
on Instagram,
stories.
but like, but it is one of those things where I I pride myself, and Matthew prides we both pride ourselves on taking really good care of our house. We recognize what a privilege it is to have a house. And so it's one of those things where there's just nothing that we could have predicted. It's nothing that we did. And I think it's one of those things where, I don't know, I would hope that even if like just a couple of other people who have maybe had home problems or like even apartment problems or whatever, like find some like comfort or like some solidarity in hearing about it, that it's not alone. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you don't take care of your things. Like sometimes things just happen, even if you're like a great homeowner, even if you're a great like apartment owner who takes care of your things, like sometimes stuff just happens. And I would like if it were me on the other end, I would feel better like seeing this project and being like, oh, okay, this stuff does happen. It's not like if it's ever happened to you, it's not just you. Like there's I don't know. It feels good to know that somebody else has gone through this.
Yeah, there's solidarity knowing that you're not the only one, or that someone else has it worse, or like, hey, we're all in this together.
I love that I saw a comment that said, "Let's get the flex tape." Flex Seal boys, said the quick awesome bro. That's so awesome.
Someone called Jontron. I know he knows the flex.
He does. Maybe we can get the hookup and just flex tape our entire
tape
first
my
floor.
House. Oh, that's a great video right there. That's a great brand deal. The last thing I'll say about this, and I mean, this is kind of continuing this theme that's been carrying on in our lives since the Defy stuff, and has been kind of like this nagging cloud over our heads, is the idea of people being terrible. Like, and people not being trustworthy. So like, as we've kind of uncovered all this stuff happening underneath the floor, one of the things, especially in the kitchen corner, that we found today is, wow, these boards are really falling apart, except for this one board that is suspiciously carved out and kind of placed in
and looks brand new.
So basically the long and short of it is there's a solid amount of evidence to indicate that like the previous owners knew that this was going on and then decided to not fix the problem, but instead just kind of like put a temporary band-aid over over a section of it. And so it's, it wasn't solved when they did it, but they were like, this will be good enough to get it sold and move on. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, we've had a lot of disappointment with just people being dishonest or not like properly representing themselves lately.
Yeah,
obviously with the Defy situation, with the house now, it's just like one kick after. I don't know if it's people in California in general, or if it's just like
I think it's
humanity.
No, I think it's.
I don't want to be cynical about that.
No, it's like there's good and bad everywhere. And again, like it's one of those things where if this has happened to you, or like, because you can only have so much information when you buy a house or when you rent an apartment. You can't rip up the floorboards to see what's going on and like see if it's going to be a good place and all that stuff. So like if it's ever happened to you, also just like I guess knowing that. Like, yeah, there are a lot of shady people out there who try to cover things up, who try and cover up either their mistakes or something that goes wrong and then just pass the buck to the next person. And it sucks, but like I'm glad that we are not passing the buck. I'm glad that we're actually fixing it. Like there is like catharsis in actually fixing something and having it reset and being like, I know that this is done right because I either did it myself or I know exactly how it was done. So that's good at least.
You know you're dealing with a severe problem though when the contractor yeah, I feel you, buddy, but you're not paying for it. You're profiting off of it. So hey, so anyway, that's our little personal life. Thank you for letting me vent a little bit.
Yeah,
because
we'll keep you updated
we
on
need
the
to
saga
vent our
of
house. That's not the only thing that needs to vent.
Yeah.
Our house needs desperate ventilation as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's our little personal story. Moving on, I think last time we did TSeries episode 1, I had briefly mentioned, and kind of what was topical around then was Shane Dawson.
Yeah.
And the whole Chuck E. Cheese pizza conspiracy. As a part of that too, there was also interspliced in the Brittany Louise Taylor drama.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which was just kind of like, here's a story about pizza, and then here's a story about human trafficking.
Okay, so this is probably my hottest take of the day.
Here, hold up. Should we contextualize before you do a hot take?
Ooh.
I mean, contextualize in terms of, so for those of you who didn't see, Shane Dawson, obviously hugely popular creator on the platform. His videos getting like 10s to 20, I think right now it's at 25 million views. His like conspiracy theories with Shane Dawson right now, it's a 2-parter. It's 90 minutes long each piece. It is long. But the point in question here is his most recent one was this fusion of a story from a former YouTuber who kind of disappeared off the map named Brittany Louise Taylor, and then his explorations into whether Chuck E. Cheese Pizza just reuses pizza from previous customers as they deliver new pizzas out because of how misshapen they are.
Yeah.
So anyway, Stephanie has a hot take about this that she wants to share with the world.
Yeah, so there are these two stories going on in Shane's conspiracy theory video. And personally, I found Brittany Louise
Taylor.
Brittany,
BLT.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I call her BLT.
Brittany Louise Taylor. Her story I thought was actually really fascinating. The Chuck E. Cheese stuff, I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, it's like sort of interesting to think about. But the editing for the video, this is my hot take, I could not stand it. I was like, because he would go to like cliffhangers and then switch back and forth between the stories.
That's how you get retention time, Steph.
At the moment, well, what it made me do was actually click around in the video a lot, just to try to get through one of the stories all at the same time, because it would cut off in moments where I'm like, okay, this story is picking up momentum, like let's see it through, like let's get to a payoff, and then it just wouldn't, and it would cut over to something else where he's just like mulling around the back alley outside of a Chuck E. Cheese. Oh, come on, let's just get through a story. And I was interested in the Chuck E. Cheese stuff enough that I would probably have watched through it anyway, but I was like, come on, this is like a really this is like a story with a lot of gravity. Like this, I guess it's like a spoiler alert or whatever, but like, but Brittany Louise Taylor was the victim of like a potential or almost like, whoa, did you see the shape of my pizza? And it's just kind of like a weird
Are you saying there's some level of tonal disconnect there?
For me, there was total tonal disconnect. Like I said, I probably would have watched through both stories, but I just wanted them to be like cohesive and like together.
That's funny. The thing that I'll say about that is, I mean, I agree that from like a storytelling standpoint, that's probably not the best way to do it, and that by intercutting those two stories together, like, one, they don't really, like, if you're gonna do something like that, the two stories should like complement each other in some way, or kind of like be thematically linked.
Yeah, these were
outside
two
of
totally unrelated stories.
Lies. Outside of lies. And the other thing, like, the whole idea of conspiracy theory, they're not even really I guess, kind of conspiracy theory.
The Chuck E. Cheese one is definitely a conspiracy theory. The other one is more just like more just like talking about a like a scary incident. And I feel like Shane kind of like, you know, has a spectrum of stories that he talks about that sort of fall all across that range. But these were two at like kind of far ends of the spectrum.
But from an analytics guy, right? And Steph and I look at the data all the time.
Oh, thank you. I guess I'm not the only one. Maybe my take is not as hot as I thought. But like I felt the same way, said Panini. There was someone else who was like, thank you, yes, I felt the same.
Oh, ye boy.
Yeah.
Ye boy also agrees. No, and I totally agree too. The interesting thing about that though, and I gotta say, hey, well done on this, is the fact that as people who look at the data all the time, as people who are, you know, looking across a lot of different YouTube channels, have worked with a lot of YouTube channels, anytime you have a segmented video, people drop off.
Yeah.
So, like, anytime you change the segment, people will drop off, right?
You can see it in retention. It like YouTube gives you your retention graph and stuff, and you can see exactly where people go at the end of segments.
Yeah, a great example of that actually are the late night shows, right? So in the early days when the late night shows were coming onto YouTube, they didn't know how to YouTube very well, and so they were putting up like full episodes or full sequences from the show with like the celebrity guest. And yes, they would have the celebrity guest like do the interview, then a game, then like a post interview, things like that. And that would all be one video. And very clearly in the data, every single time they would switch from interview to game and then game to other interview, you would see drop, and it would be pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
And so and the reason why is because each of those quote unquote story arcs end. Like, people come to YouTube for a one-to-one relationship between the video that I've clicked on and the content that I'm seeing. And as soon as I feel like that's done, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And so Shane producing a 90-minute video, you know, that is very fragmented in this kind of like, wow, this is a weird tonal whiplash between these two stories.
Yeah.
But in a very clever way, what he's been able to do is, you know, because the story never completes, and exactly what you said, you wanted to see through to the ending of those stories,
Yeah.
he kind of forces you to watch both things and watch through the entire thing in order to kind of complete the story arc as it's written.
Yeah, agreed. And like, if I don't know, for me that was just hard because I literally just ended up clicking through or like
Sure.
scrolling through the video. And I also thought that, you know, the Chuck E. Cheese stuff, while it's interesting, like it's hard to know from one visit to a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant whether that's like an actual thing.
Is that not actual experimentation?
Now I have watched a few videos like who have basically corralled a bunch of the responses to that video, and it's really interesting because you see on the one hand, actually there were a bunch of tweets that came at Shane Dawson afterward from Chuck E. Cheese employees or former employees who were like, yes, this is a thing that happened. We did this. We reused pizzas. And then on the other hand, there are a whole bunch of people who are also like, no, we would never do that. Like that's gross. Why? And who have said like no. And then there's also like this small segment of people in the middle who are like, actually, like when pizzas, so this whole thing is about like the leftover pizza at Chuck E. Cheese and what happens to it. Do they recycle it? Basically, like they piece together leftover pieces of pizza and then reserve them as a whole pizza by like putting the different pieces together. Or do they do what, you know, they should do is take leftovers and throw them out because it's not hygienic to reserve them.
Or let the employees keep them.
Well, so that's the middle segment.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The middle segment is there are a few people who came out and they were like, hey, when we would get leftover pizza in the back, like the manager would ask, does anyone want leftover pizza? Otherwise, it's being trashed. So in some cases, actually, the employees were allowed to either take it home or eat it themselves if it was like leftover from the customers.
Right.
So there's like this whole spectrum, and it's weird. Is it like location specific? Because there were
It's
a
probably
lot
based
of
on the
people.
manager.
It might be based on the manager. Like there are a lot of people who actually came out and said like, yeah, conspiracy confirmed. This is a thing. And then there were a whole bunch of others who were like, no way. And both of them seemed like pretty convincing with like specific examples and like, how could I make this up? Like, this definitely happened, or like, no, this would never happen. In fact, like, I guess some Chuck E. Cheese locations have started like bringing their trash can outside of the kitchen to show people that they throw their pizza away. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's gotten so bad.
Look at all this wasted pizza, guys.
Yeah. I mean, a video that gets 25 million views on a platform like YouTube that's like, it's a lot of young people on the platform. And if not young people, maybe people who have young kids who would go to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's a big deal.
It is.
26 million people is a lot of people.
That's a lot of potential customers.
Exactly.
Who are watching that and potentially being scared away from your service.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, it's interesting. So Chuck E. Cheese, I know, or at least the rumor has it, that they sent Shane a cease and desist letter about this.
He hasn't confirmed that or anything.
It hasn't been confirmed, and it's I wouldn't be surprised if they did. In which case, I think he would have to take down the video, right?
I don't know what that actually means.
Like
maybe it means he can't say anything about it. Say anything else about it. I mean, taking down the video after it has 26 million views is not like. You're not really mitigating a lot of risk there,
No.
and also at that point it's a pretty bad PR move.
Oh,
like
totally.
It's a really bad look for Chuck E. Cheese.
100%. I think at that point you need to respond in video form to kind of prove your case at that point, rather than trying to like silence the accuser sort of thing.
What would have to come out, I think, is that a bunch of independent Chuck E. Cheese franchise owners or like employees would need to come out and be like, no, I make the pizza. I am literally in the restaurant every day. This is something we would never do.
Right.
And I think if you got that kind of response, then Shane would have to, say something like, okay, well, I misjudged this, or hey, like I've actually heard from a lot of these employees who have no reason to lie about this, saying that, they don't reserve pizza.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too, because like at a certain, yes, he has like an N of 1, and I think that's one of the tricks there is, had it been a little bit more experimental or thorough in its research, I'd be curious what if anything, Chuck E. Cheese would be able to do at that point.
Maybe
right?
multiple I would have loved to see multiple locations.
Because at that point, it's like
call up some friends from another part of the country even and have them go to their local Chuck E. Cheese to see if it's like a widespread thing, you know?
Well, it's also one of those things too that it's almost like a public Yelp review. Right? Like, yes, he could be making this accusation, but he could just as likely be making it on a Yelp. You know, just because it's a video that gets a lot of traffic, is it different?
You know, that's actually a really good point because Chuck E. Cheese maybe sent this cease and desist letter, but I'm sure they get plenty of negative reviews online all
Right.
the time.
It's
Is
just
this
an
any
online video
different
review.
than a negative online review? In which case, it's totally fair for Shane to have this kind of video, even if he has a big audience. That's not his fault, you know. Like, he's doing an online review of an experience he had at Chuck E. Cheese.
I mean, it might be slander, but he's presenting the facts as, like, I mean, very literally, he is showing the facts of his visit to Chuck E. Cheese on video,
Yeah.
and, you know, commenting or speculating or whatever off of that.
He is putting that creepy music under it.
He is. I mean, there is a level of editing to it that is helping to shape public opinion, and I think that is something that needs to be accounted for. But it is one of those things where, how can you actually, as a company, you know, knock that? Like, in that case, can't you just knock any negative Yelp review? It's actually something that we were worried about when we did our, like, hey, let's petition Ally Bank to do the right thing and, you know, help give creators their money back, even
Yeah.
though there is a bankruptcy, you know, make good hierarchy, and they should kind of, like, you know, ignore that, or we should make our case why we should be higher on that kind of, like, hierarchy of
The
payments.
day after that video went up, I actually had like a good bit of stress about it, or like lost some sleep about it, being like, is Ally going to come at us with lawyers? Are they going to come after us with a cease and desist? Again, just all we did was state what we knew and what the facts were, and in a similar way, I think. Like maybe that's what Shane has done here, and he does like couch it a lot. Like Shane is kind of like the king of lampshading online, right?
If you need an example of
lessons in lampshading, Shane is like your go-to guy, right? Because he says like, this may or may not be true. This is only a theory. I'm not trying to prove it.
Sorry.
A conspiracy theory.
No, but it's very, very true.
Yeah. So it is interesting, and if that's the case, he's not trying to say that, hey, like, I'm trying to prove this. He's not saying that it's a fact. He says that multiple times. And so is that really any different from just an online review that says, because online reviews say all kinds of like garbage about places, just from, you know, whether it's true or whether people have just had an exceptionally bad experience, or they just had an exceptionally bad day and decided to take it out on a business, you know?
Sure.
All of those things happen.
Or they're just lying. I mean, like, they could just be trolls.
Or it's a review about an airline experience,
That
in which case that was
always
definitely true,
It was
and
always bad.
every airline experience is awful. But it's true.
Excuse me, you wanted 2 Biscoff? What was it? We were like in the middle of the plane, so we traveled to Brazil not too long ago.
Matthew got denied a second bag of pretzels.
I got denied. So we were traveling. It's a trip to Brazil, so it's a long trip.
It's a long.
We were
one.
down there to speak to a really cool convention about digital video and analytics and this and that.
A group of students.
Yeah.
It was like a student convention.
It was great. But we're it's a long flight down to the southern hemisphere, and especially to Sao Paulo, which is way down there.
Yeah.
And they come through like midway through this 8-10 hour flight. I forget how long it was.
Yeah.
14 hours.
Long.
But it was long, and they're like, "Hey, here's pretzels, cookies." And I'm like, "Oh, I'll take one of each, please. Thank you." And they're like, "Oh, sorry. You can only pick one."
There's not enough. And we're like, you loaded this plane for like a 10-hour trip. What? You didn't take enough pretzels?
Yeah, you can take one of each forever. Like, come on, guys. Like, I'm not expecting a lot here.
Yeah.
This isn't me asking for a second breakfast or, another cheese plate or whatever. This is literally like the bags of the dross that you give us just to make us forget how miserable we are on this plane. Like, the pretzels aren't even salted anymore. They save money by not salting the pretzels, for crying out loud. Like, at least you can do is give me a little bit of your overhyped breadstick. holy jeez, and your too dry cookie that like it tastes like sandpaper. I'm sorry. Lordy. Yeah. She actually like was mean about it too. She gave me a dirty look.
Yeah, I was like, oh, come on,
She's
man.
like, how dare you ask for both?
Please, sir,
Both?
I want some more.
No, more? You want more?
So yeah. So if
Here's
you're
less leg
if
room
you're
for you.
reviewing an airline, it's probably true. I'm always inclined to believe those Star Treks reviews where someone was like, I was shoved in the airplane hold and kept there for 8 days. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
That's pretty accurate. Absolutely. Less anything else about Shane. I was gonna say Brittany Louise. Actually, this was something that
the one last thing about
sorry.
Chuck E. Cheese
Yeah.
is that I tweeted about this. I was actually not allowed to eat Chuck E. Cheese pizza as a kid. This is just a fun fact. My family is Italian, and my dad is a pizza snob. So whether or not the pizza was ever recycled, I was actually not allowed to eat Chuck E. Cheese pizza. My family just refused to go because they were like, no, it's inedible. We can't do it.
And near me, we actually didn't have many, if any, Chuck E. Cheeses, especially when I was growing up. And so I grew up going to the Northeast Ohio equivalent, which was Mark's Fun Time.
Ooh, Mark's Fun Time.
Mark's Fun Time. Which,
how was it? What was their animatronic of choice?
You know, they didn't have animatronic.
Instead
I
of a
don't
rat,
remember them
it was
having
like
an
a
animatronic.
vulture.
I don't believe. Excuse me, Stephanie. In northeastern Ohio, we have the Buzzards, the Hinkley Buzzards, where we celebrate the Buzzard Festival every year.
Oh my!
The Buzzards come home to roost. The Buzzard. We even have radio stations named after the Buzzard. Classic.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we're hardcore with buzzards.
I didn't know
in
I
Ohio.
had tapped into this whole buzzard
See?
culture.
Yeah, you thought you were joking, but I can talk to you for days about buzzards, Stephanie. Buzzards are big. Like if you're in Medina, it's all about the bees. But if you're in Hinckley, it's all about the buzzard.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a podcast for another day.
But yeah, Mark's Fun Time. I do think it's funny though, all this attention to Chuck E. Cheese. Scott Cawthon missed his window of opportunity here.
I know.
Like all this renewed interest in animatronic themed pizzerias that serve crap pizza. Scott, where's that FNAF VR game that you were talking about? Where's the AR game? Like this is the chance. Maybe there's a theory to be had about whether Five Nights at Freddy, whether Freddy Fazbear's Pizza reuses its pizza from is FNAF's most heinous crime. It's pizza reuse.
You laugh, but it's the next game theory.
Oh, thank goodness. There's nothing else to talk about these days. Apex Legends. The last thing I was gonna say about kind of the Shane Dawson stuff and his docuseries here was my surprise, actually, because again, I've spoken a little bit about my history working at Big Frame as one of my first ever jobs. It was one of the original multi-channel networks, and I was one of the earliest hires there. And Brittany Louise Taylor was one of the big clients that Big Frame worked with, actually. So Big Frame worked with a lot of like the very early YouTubers who had achieved a lot of success on the platform. And Brittany Louise at the time had 3 different channels, I believe. One was kind of crafting oriented, like DIY. One was more like sketch comedy based, a la like Smosh, but like a female solo led Smosh / music. Because everyone always has to have music. And then there was a third one, I think that was vlog-oriented. And she was actually one of the people that I helped consult back in the day. She was super nice, super tall. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so small next to you. But no, super nice, super friendly girl. And then, you know, I had my consulting session with her. I saw her pop into the office every now and then. And then after
had she had her baby at that point yet, or no?
I don't believe so.
And you never saw like this guy.
I never
guy
saw
that this mystery man from her stuff.
I was just the lowly analytics guy who people talked to and then promptly forgot about.
Oh, sweet.
Until years later when they were like, wait a minute, you're the game theory guy, but aren't you that guy that I talked to all those years ago about the analytics? Oh yeah, thanks for that.
It's actually shocking how many people like you crossed paths with at that point who are still who have just made like really long-term names for themselves, like Jenna Marbles and Colleen, and I mean Brittany Louise Taylor's sort of coming back.
Daystorm,
still
kicking around.
I can't believe that one. And I mean you also had others that like were just huge at the time. Like you had Hannah Hart, and then also
Tyler.
Tyler and what's her name? the crazy girlfriend one.
Oh, the overly attached
Yeah,
girlfriend.
overly attached girlfriend. That was it.
That was right.
Yeah. And like
Deshaun Raw.
yeah, talking about like all of those people, and a lot of them are like names that still linger around. So there are like stories about them that go kind of way back.
Yeah, like the original, like, it's interesting because Deshaun and overly attached girlfriend, like, their memes persist, even though I think a lot of people forget kind of the stories behind them. And so it was interesting to be a part of their channels, or like seeing kind of how their channels were evolving and kind of how their careers online evolved in those early days, and how they were trying to kind of like grow or change or evolve with the times. And then, you know, just things change. They make, you know, decisions that don't necessarily jive with the algorithm or whatever. And like, you know, they persist through these images and these GIFs and things like that. But, you know, they themselves as creators kind of like, you know, disappear or stop, you know, evolve, change away.
Or like Shane, I mean, I think there's like a case to be made that a lot of them have like these ebbs and flows, like where Shane went through like a period where he had to change his content, and now he's like back so full force and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy to see like how long these careers for some people have gone on. It's very cool.
It is. It's really interesting. So anyway, that's a little bit about Shane, and that was the interesting thing to me about Brittany Louise Taylor, was like I didn't realize at the time that all of this was going on. And then
she was just a nice tall girl who crossed your doorstep.
Then I'm like, hey, your content strategy is a bit unfocused. Like, I mean, honestly, I very distinctly remember having that conversation with where I'm like, you're doing a lot of stuff, and because of it, you're not able to upload regularly on any of these given channels. And also, like, this one is kind of fragmented because you got like music and comedy, and it's all competing against itself. It was fun,
man.
but then she
giving her the hard news.
I that's my job. That was my job as the analytics guy, but I didn't realize that she had disappeared in all this. So it's interesting to see like this figure who I had tangentially crossed paths with in the past suddenly reemerge, and you know, and have such like a crazy, terrifying story to tell.
If you don't know it, we're gonna talk about some other stuff, but if you don't know it, just in case you're interested, I know she did write a book about it that Shane talks about in his episode, so you can also look her up and just like see like that she's done work to, I guess, warn others about this and to like talk about her story. And then she actually just recently released an update video, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm going to go check it out.
Yep. All right,
cool.
So that's enough about Shane.
Yeah.
Talked a lot about him.
Let's talk about what, YouTube
ads.
Hey.
So
Oh man.
This is a fun one.
I need a sip.
Ooh, sipping the tea. Is it still hot? Is your tea still hot?
It's
Stephanie?
pretty warm. It's pretty warm.
It's lukewarm
We're
tea.
doing well. I have a barrel shaped mug it's doing well to retain the heat today.
Wow.
I know.
This is what is the preferred vessel for hot tea, Steph?
I'll drink it out of anything.
Really? Anything?
Straight out of the pot, I would maybe go for that.
I like that you didn't choose anything that's even remotely extreme. Like, oh yeah, I'll drink it out of anything. The pot?
The pot.
Whoa, you are wild, Steph.
I know.
Calm down here.
I don't know if you can keep up with me, edgelord.
You're the edgelord of tea, Stephanie. Oh, that's adorable. We aren't edgy at all.
All right,
we're as edgy as a butter knife.
That was funny. We had a good chuckle over that little joke there, Matthew. It's time to talk about YouTube advertising.
Yeah, let's talk about YouTube ads. So, in case you haven't seen the news, in case you haven't seen the drama, there's been a lot of concerns about like the surging. Ooh, there it is. Wow, Chris
Ooh, hey.
upping his game today of assets that are being pulled up while we talk. But basically, YouTube is now demonetizing videos, or kind of going through this process where they're demonetizing videos based on comments.
Yeah.
Now, that headline is a bit extreme, and I don't think it really properly conveys what's really going on here. So basically, the tea is that there are a lot of channels on YouTube and a lot of channels that feature young kids, which is great. Like, awesome. This is a platform for everyone. Kids,
family videos, family vlogs.
It's great.
And I can say, as someone with a little baby, I have watched a whole slew of like new mom videos, the stuff you should buy for a baby, the stuff you should buy for a little kid, and a lot of those have like babies or little kids in them. Nothing wrong with that. Like, see it all the time. It's totally normal.
Right. But the thing is, not everyone is as wholesome when they watch these sorts of videos as Stephanie is. That is a polite way of putting it.
I am just there with my Amazon shopping list, and I'm like, oh, I have to get that. Oh, I have to get that. Oh, my baby's probably not going to survive if I don't have that. And so I just end up making these massive online shopping purchases based on watching YouTube videos. It's the marketing is so effective. I'm not even kidding.
And so you have some unsavory individuals who are watching these videos and specifically, putting in like in the comments, specifically calling out certain time codes that are more appealing to people who are kind of sketchy.
Yeah, I mean,
you get what I'm going for here.
Yeah, and that is really serious. It's really scary. It is illegal. Also, because anything inappropriate involving children is obviously totally illegal, and so like there's a very, very bright line there. I don't think anyone is in disagreement with the fact that targeting children in like a predatory way is totally, totally wrong.
Right.
That being said,
though, so there was a video that basically was put together to call out like, hey, this is what's going on the platform. There are people who are watching these for bad reasons. They're specifically in the comments calling out the specific time codes in question. And YouTube, what are you doing? There are these, disgusting people who are using your website. What you going to do about it? I'm sure advertisers aren't happy about this being put in front of these videos. And so YouTube, as a result, basically banned comments from a large slew of videos.
Number, like millions of videos.
Yeah, and they also, in conjunction with it, where there are banned comments to be had, don't worry, friends, there's also demonetization to be had, saying, hey, we're going to demonetize these videos for some reason.
Well, and the reason that they talked about is that, and all of this started when advertisers saw this video, like, outing all of these people who were targeting children through innocent YouTube videos about them. And there were a couple of advertisers who were like, whoa, I don't want my ads running next to a video that has this kind of that has these kinds of comments, that has comments from predators, and people who are doing inappropriate things. And so they were like, I'm taking all of my ads off of YouTube. And YouTube's like, no, don't worry. We'll disable all the comments on those videos, and we'll make sure that they're pulled out of monetization so that there's no chance your ads run in front of them. And that's YouTube's logic, which, again, like, YouTube sometimes uses a sledgehammer instead of like what is a precision tapping tool? I don't know.
Ball-peen hammer, Stephanie. I believe the word you're looking for is a ball-peen hammer.
Whatever the teeniest hammer is that you could probably use to address this issue, to root out the bad guys on this platform, which are real and do need to be dealt with. But instead, YouTube comes down with like the wrecking ball and destroys like a whole bunch of channels who weren't doing anything wrong.
I just want to say ball-peen again.
Yeah.
It's a fun one to say.
It's an ironic one to use during this particular story. I don't love your use of ball peen during this discussion, to tell you the truth.
I will use my ball peen whenever I deem it fit.
Nope.
Actually, I was going to say, that's probably not a good thing to say.
Again, wrong discussion to say that one during.
So anyway, obviously, this comes...
I love everyone's like, chisel, scapulae.
Ooh, scapulae.
Thank you for all of your creative input on what they should be using. Chisel and scapula seem to be the tweezer. Tweezer would be a good one as well.
Connerter, etc. Yeah. This is great. But so obviously this brings up a lot of issues, right? Where now all of a sudden you see creators who are being penalized, ball penalized, for their comments, which is a concerning, I think, because, as we all recognize online, the comments are kind of a wily bunch.
Yeah, and creators often don't have a lot of control over comments, and there are a lot of ways even of rooting around community guidelines, right? So lots of channels have community guidelines where they have words that can't be used in comments, emoji that can't be used in comments, all that kind of stuff. But it's really hard to make sure that there's nothing inappropriate that can possibly leak through, right? That's almost completely out of control for creators, and most creators don't want to turn off their comments because they want feedback from their community. And, you know, in general, like if you see a YouTube video where comments are turned off, usually it has a massive dislike ratio, and it's sort of like considered this cowardly thing to turn off your comments on YouTube, because it means that you're closed off to your community. It means that you're not even letting your community talk to each other. And there are like very specific circumstances where it's the right thing to do to turn off comments, but for the most part, people really don't like doing that. And as a viewer, most people don't like looking at videos where the comments have been turned off. It's very isolating on a platform where everyone's so used to talking about everything. If I go onto a YouTube video where there are no comments, and I feel this way about YouTube Premium sometimes actually too, where you go on there and it's like, oh man, I just watched this episode, I really like it, or I really hate it. I wonder what everyone else thought about it. Did they agree with me? And there are no comments. There's not a comments section.
Right.
You're like,
I don't know what to think about this anymore.
I mean, not
the hive mind is not telling me what my feelings should be.
I mean, as weird as that is to admit, like kind of, you want validation for your feelings, or you want to see like, am I way off base here? And so the first place you look is the comments. And when the comments section doesn't exist on YouTube videos, it feels isolating. It feels like you're watching in a vacuum. I mean, it's actually like a kind of an unpleasant experience. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm so used to reading comments, but you know, that's just me.
No, I think you're totally fair. The interesting thing about this is, and I kind of understand YouTube's problem here. So it's interesting. Let's spill the tea, because this is TSeries after all.
Whoa.
The problem that this is brought up, right, about these kind of unsavory individuals who prey on like young people. It's something that, in a conversation I had with one of the heads of product a year ago, and it wasn't like a private conversation, like it was at a public event. Like it was a YouTube creator summit, basically, where they bring a bunch of creators together, they bring a bunch of YouTube employees together, and you're able to just talk about things that are happening on the platform. And so I know this guy. I've talked to him multiple times in the past, and you know, he actively was talking to me then a year ago about these specific types of bad actors and what they were trying to do on the platform to get rid of them, how to circumvent them, how to prevent these sorts of videos from being done, this and that. And so it's interesting that's being brought up now, and that it's this big epidemic and this and that, when in actuality YouTube's been working on a lot of different solutions around this for the better part of a year, if not more.
Yeah, they've been working on this kind of thing and similar issues. Like, are there other issues on the platform? Yes. Are they probably working on them and aware of them? Probably yes, to some extent, but they also don't want to advertise a lot of times like the fact that like, hey, there's this big problem on the platform and we're working to fix it. Instead, they're like, hey, can we fix it behind the scenes and knock it out before it becomes a big issue, or before like a couple of people who are bad on the platform give a lot of other people ideas on how to be bad on the platform. And so they try and knock out stuff behind the scenes, which goes to like the idea that like maybe there are actually a bunch of other things that have just never made it out into the public eye that YouTube has like kind of squashed behind the scenes.
And I think that's,
but you just don't know, right?
And I think that's the thing that like we all kind of undervalue, and having conversations with him kind of made me have a better understanding of it a little bit, because to us who are good, wholesome people, you know, yourselves, myself, whoever, like to us the biggest problem with YouTube—
Speak for yourself. I'm an edgelord.
Wow. I mean, yes, you are a T edgelord, absolutely. But to us, you know, the worst thing that is, you know, a problem on YouTube, or some of the worst things, is like, wow, my video isn't getting monetized anymore, or like, my sub box is broken and this channel that I was subscribed to isn't showing up to me anymore. Like, that is in a lot of, or like, hey, small creators aren't being valued. Like, that's a bigger one. But, you know, those are kind of small potatoes when you actually look at some of the bigger issues, criminal activities that YouTube is probably and seems to be dealing with behind the scenes in a lot of, you know, Russian bot hackers and people filtering, you know, exploitative content on the web. When you open the door to any video possible out there, you know, you think of like pornographic content, you think of, you know, predatory content, this and that. Like, there is so much out there that to us it doesn't even enter the realm of possibility, because we just don't think that way. But from having that conversation with this high up person at YouTube who's in charge of the product. He's like, this is the stuff I have to watch and figure out solutions on how to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And again, this was a year ago, and I felt bad for him because, you know, this is a guy with a family, you know, who's just a normal guy working at his job, but he's having to subject himself to watching this stuff and seeing how the platform is dealing with it and figuring out how do we stop this from happening.
There's actually a related story that's just come out over the last 2 days around Facebook too, because there's a whole big issue right now going on with Facebook moderators who also have to watch tons and tons of all the content that's been flagged as inappropriate on Facebook. They have to watch it and decide whether or not it should be removed. And it's coming out that, you know, these thousands of people who have been employed by Facebook to help like filter out stuff on the platform so that, you know, bad stuff doesn't leak out there are developing all sorts of mental health problems. Sure. They're getting PTSD. They're having nervous breakdowns. They're having anxiety attacks constantly because of the stuff that they are subjected to at work. And they've even said, this is really fascinating, and maybe this is like worth a discussion next week or something like that.
I could talk about this. Is interesting. I have experience with this at Defy.
They are becoming indoctrinated to some of the stuff that they're seeing,
really?
Where they can't externalize it anymore. And they're like, they've done interviews with some of the people who work on as these moderators, and a couple of them are like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, I think 9/11 might be a conspiracy. I think that, like, I'm questioning some of the things that I've learned in school about the Holocaust. Like, I mean, unbelievable stuff where it's very clear that they're not able to separate out, like, what is real from what is conspiracy, from what is, like, dangerous, really hurtful, content. And they're having all kinds of problems. And so it's not that they're not actually hired directly by Facebook. They're hired by this other company.
Sure.
But and we have experience with this directly because we have done work with Facebook. They're under such unbelievably strict NDAs with Facebook, non-disclosure agreements. They cannot talk about anything they watch. They can't talk about how they deal with it. They can't talk about how Facebook deals with it. Most of them can't even talk about the fact that they work on Facebook at all, or that their company has a contract with Facebook. It's really crazy. And so they're just in this like pressure cooker of terrible content. I mean, people getting killed. People get like terrorism, violent sex crimes, like awful, just the worst stuff you can imagine. And it's a huge problem.
I mean, I actually can relate to that. So at Defy, like I mentioned before, I'm their director. I was their director of digital strategy for a while. And so I was in charge of kind of supervising anything that touched anything that we did on the digital video side, right? So mostly that was working with like the Smosh channel, the Screen Junkies channel, making sure that their strategies made sense, making sure the analytics were good, optimizing for different things, working on programming, all of that. But part of it was also touching and supervising the clip licensing team. So Defy was originally two companies, Break and Alloy. I mean, it was originally more than that, but like Break and Alloy. Break had a very prodigious clip licensing, clip acquisition business where they would go out and find like viral video clips and then buy them and then represent them out in the marketplace. So like, hey, this person got into a fight and got smacked in the head with a shovel. Shovel fight was actually one of our biggest clips, I remember, which was weird, but it was one of those ones that ended up like it caught virality. I think we ended up purchasing it for whatever, and then, you know, it got disseminated out to all these different like clip shows, like the Funniest Home Videos, the Soup back in the day on E, all of that stuff, and we would have to like manage the rights to that clip because then we had kind of owned it or owned the license to it. But because of that, we had a team of exactly those sorts of people, right, who were responsible for dredging through all the videos that were being uploaded onto, like, all these different subreddits, all these different places where you would find, you know, early viral videos before they caught fire, right? So that way they could get them early, be like, hey, we want to represent you, and then from there. And the stuff that that team had to deal with and actually watch was mind-blowing to me. Like, and they were fine with it, but you could tell, like, their level of what they were comfortable watching was so vastly different from, like, what I myself would expose myself to. Like, you know, and exactly what you mentioned, right? stuff where like crashes where people die, beheadings and terrorist stuff, like all of these videos they would just watch and like they would share amongst themselves and be like, oh my gosh, did you see this one? And they would sometimes call me over and I'm like, nope, I'm good. Like, I don't want to see any of this, because to me, once you see that sort of, you can't get it out of your head.
Yeah.
Like, I have a really hard time.
There's a reason why I close my eyes during horror movies.
Yeah, you can't.
Once it's in there, it doesn't get out.
Yeah, you really can't shut the door on that sort of stuff. Like, once you blow open that door, it's just there and present, and it can pop into your head at any given point in time. And so I totally understand and have experience working alongside those sorts of teams who were exposed to that, and like, they seem to be okay on the other end of it, but I could absolutely understand why prolonged exposure to that sort of content would be so traumatic and desensitizing, and just fundamentally shift your perspective of the world and what is and isn't right, and what is and isn't acceptable.
That's one of those ones that I hope that we can hand off to AI soon, so that AI can detect all of the, like, especially like the worst of those kinds of videos, so that humans don't have to review them, right?
Yeah.
Because you can train AI to look for
Sure.
violent graphic content, that kind of stuff. So actually, that's one of those jobs that, like, the sooner we can get robots to take it over, the better, because robots don't get PTSD.
Right. It is interesting, though, too. So, again, going back to that conversation I had with one of the heads of product at YouTube, so we had talked about kind of this predator issue and how they were trying to deal with it. But the other interesting thing about it was we had also talked about some of the difficulties with exactly that, training AI and these neural network systems to identify this stuff, right? So he called out music videos, where you look at the music video for This Is America by Childish Gambino, or at that time there was another music video that featured, I think, a girl with like her head in a plastic bag.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, look at these music videos. They are some of the biggest videos on the platform this week, or in this time period. And, they are brand unsafe by every measure of what, we would consider brand unsafe, because This Is America features guns and death and violence and like racist kind of like undertones, or not racist undertones, but like racist commentary, or commentary on racism is the right way to put it.
I was going to say.
It's not racist. Yeah,
the video isn't racist, but it does have it themes itself around race and racial tension.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, thank you. That's the right way to put it. And then here's this other music video by a hugely popular creator. Again, I forget which one it is, but it features, repeated scenes of someone with their head in a plastic bag, which obviously is dangerous and unsafe. But you have advertisers coming onto the platform and actively wanting to buy ads in front of these videos, because they're from popular musicians, because they are some of the biggest things that are catching the most virality right now. They're being shared hundreds of thousands to millions of times. So, how do you train an algorithm that this is okay when it's really brand unsafe? And to me, I would say, well, maybe they should all be brand unsafe.
Right,
you have
to be fair.
You have to have a standard.
And I think that actually calls up like something that's really interesting, and like the hypocrisy of a lot of advertisers, which I don't want to touch on too much, because we're actually going to be doing a game theory that sort of talks a little bit about this, like coming up in the next week or two. But advertisers are weird, and by advertisers I just mean like any of the brands that you see in commercials, right? It could be like Hershey bars or Downy fabric softener or life insurance or whatever. Anything that you see it in like a commercial for, those are like the advertisers. When people talk about adpocalypse and advertisers pulling out of YouTube, that's like the kind of companies they're talking about, just people who run advertisements. But it shows how there's this like difference in perception about what they feel is okay based on whether a YouTube creator made it or whether it was made by someone like quote unquote real or official, or it was made by a media company. And it sort of calls up like this story that like I think is pretty fascinating and relates to this, because we've worked with a lot of companies. We've also worked with advertising agencies, which are another kind of like advertiser middleman, and we've worked with like Google and YouTube, right? So a lot of times what happens when there's like one of these advertiser scares, it all starts as like it's this like massive chain reaction where everyone is trying to like pass the blame on to someone else. It's and literally, like, I'm not even kidding. Like, say you're at like Coca-Cola or like what, you know, some like really big company, right?
Diet Carbonated Beverage X.
If you're at Diet Carbonated Beverage X and you see that there's this like, oh my gosh, there's a problem on YouTube where advertisers are getting like there's ads running in front of videos with like bad comments, and like somebody's like some COO or some like head of marketing there calls the marketing team and they're like, we need to make sure that not like, have you seen this? We need to make sure that Carbonated Beverage X's, you know, ads aren't running in front of these videos.
Diet Carbonated
Beverage.
Thank you.
And the Diet Carbonated Beverage marketing team is like, uh-oh, we need to, like, we weren't paying attention. Like, where are our YouTube ads running? They're like, we have no idea. We better make sure that they stop altogether so we can make sure that they don't run in front of these questionable videos, because we're going to get fired if we do.
Yeah.
It's not because they care. It's not because there's like really some huge, you know, moral quandary. It's because they don't want to get fired. So the boss calls them. They're like, we don't want to get fired. So who can we pass the blame to? And they're like, no, boss, it's not our fault. It was our advertising agency. And then basically an advertising agency takes like, you know, Diet Carbonated Beverage X. They've got like $10 million that they want to use to like for advertisements on TV, on YouTube, or whatever. They hand that money off most of the time to like a middleman, which is an advertising agency. And they're like, here, take all this money. You're experts on advertising. Run our ads in all sorts of places. And the advertising agency is like, hey, this is a ton of money. That's awesome. Let's like throw some at TV. Let's like throw some at YouTube. Let's like throw ads all over the place. And so then the company's like, great. The advertising agency is going to take care of it. We don't have to think about it anymore. We don't have to pay attention to it. And they don't. Like, we know what happens with these companies. They hand off massive amounts of money and they're like, go put this in ads. But they don't ever pay attention to it again. And
until
that's
there's a bad
point.
story.
Until there's a bad
it's like
story.
Knee-jerk reaction.
Exactly.
Pull
And then
everything.
Yeah.
You guys weren't accountable.
Exactly.
It's basically, so you know, I feel bad for YouTube. I know this is my hot take, right? I feel bad for YouTube with this because they have to do everyone's job for them. It's like a group project, and YouTube is the one who has to like save everyone's grade, right? Where everyone's like, wow, this platform is terrible. And it's like, no, if you were doing your job right, ad agency X, you know,
or if your advertisers, like if the brands were paying attention to where their ads are going, because you can on YouTube, you can put ads anywhere. You don't you can put them on like really specific videos if you want to. You can make sure that they never ever like are on anything that would be even remotely brand unsafe, but you have to be paying attention, and most companies aren't.
Well, not even pay attention, like you just have to be smart about, like you just have to use the platform and the tools that are available, which are not hard.
Yeah.
They are actually very easy to use and figure out how to optimize, like, and this is coming from us where, you know, the ad buying stuff is like very tangential to what, like, we don't really do that, but I'm aware of it because it's important to be aware of that. So if your job is full-time, like, hey, here's $10 million, figure out how to spend it on this platform, it behooves you to figure out how to use it effectively, but they don't. People are just bad at their jobs.
Yeah.
And as a result, YouTube is the one who has to clean up everyone else's messes when a Pepsi ad shows up in front of a terrorist video, and it's like, how did that get there? It must be YouTube's fault. No, it was whoever Pepsi's brand agency was, quite honestly.
It's not YouTube's
you
fault.
suck at your job, and all of us suffer because you suck at your job. But, you know, let's blame the lowest common denominator, which is YouTube.
It's
honestly,
like,
this is how it works.
Boss blames company, blames ad agency, blames YouTube, and then YouTube's the only way that YouTube can go is be like, okay, well, I guess it's a problem with the content, so we got to shut the content down.
Yeah.
And so content creators are like at the end of this line, which is why every time one of these things comes up, you know, like there are lots of content creators who are just like, they were like at the end of the stick, and that's where like all the blame rolled to.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a nuanced it's a nuanced opinion, right? And that sort of stuff doesn't work well in headlines. It doesn't work well in tweets. But it is. It's one of those things where, like, yeah, YouTube's a bit at fault because it has to have this. It has this knee-jerk reaction of like, well, pull everything. But at the same time, they kind of have to pull everything to reinstate confidence in the advertisers, the brands, whoever. In this case, Epic Games, the creators of Fortnite, were one of the big people who pulled their ads in the wake of this controversy to say, no, we're taking this seriously. You are safe now. Please come back to our platform. We don't want you to go away. And so YouTube has to have this knee-jerk reaction to do it. Creators suffer as a result, which sucks. YouTube shouldn't have to do that in the first place, which also sucks because, again, at the end of the day, they have made all these tools available for the people who are buying the ads. It is just them being incompetent at their jobs that is ultimately causing these problems to happen. That is the long and short of it. But, because no one else is willing to clean up the mess, it's YouTube who has to do it. And in the meantime, it's the creators who have to suffer for it, which sucks.
Yep. So there's going to be we're going to do a game theory that sort of touches on some other stuff about that. So for that, I think I've said my piece on that one. How do you feel?
Me too. I
good.
think hey,
Feel good now.
because TSeries, we talk very slowly about topics. We should move on to one final one.
Okay, we'll do one more. What do we want to talk
which
about?
Which is kind of a follow-up to what we were talking about, the whole TSeries PewDiePie subscribe to PewDiePie stuff from last time. Only this time it is the appearance of Elon Musk, entrepreneur extraordinaire, meme lord extraordinaire, as well as Justin Roiland, who is creator of not only Rick and Morty, but also of Accounting Plus, which we've been covering a lot on Game Theory and looking for the Secret Zoo level. So
we're totally a fan of him.
Hosting meme review. Do you have it? Are we just?
Oh man.
Are you just visually showing a clip?
It's not playing the audio, is it?
No, it's just a nice
You're just
little
there
clip.
to show. These are them, Elon Musk and
you're-
Justin Roiland.
Yeah, if you're watching and not just listening, it's just the two of them. They sit in front of a computer, in front of a pretty bland backdrop, and they react to a number of memes.
About themselves.
Mostly about some of them
Or
are
general.
about themselves. Some of them are general. I actually had higher hopes for this one, to be honest.
This is an interesting. So obviously this is a huge deal, right? So first off,
Yes.
let me impress upon everyone who's watching how big of a deal this is, right? So Elon Musk is billionaire is he a billionaire?
I don't know.
Yes.
He seems to perpetually have a lot of money, but I don't know if it's his.
Chris, what is it?
I think he's a billionaire, but I think it's the assets sort of thing where he could be not a billionaire tomorrow.
Elon Musk is an interesting fellow because he's obviously a guy who has a lot of big ideas, right? He's I'm going to create a space program that brings people to space, and I'm going to create a bunch of driverless cars, and I'm going to create a underground tunnel system that, prevents there from being traffic in Los Angeles. These are all things that he does or says he is doing or is trying to do. He makes a lot of big promises. The actual truth or validity behind them is becoming more and more questionable, I think, the longer he goes on in business. And I think if you follow investment news, people are starting to be is this guy really to be believed? Long story short, though, is he's become a favorite of the meme community. And he's one of the most respected or at least most known business people currently working today with all these big ideas. And so for him to appear on Meme Review and host it alongside PewDiePie is a huge deal. It is, the equivalent of Beyonce almost, hosting a Meme Review, only from a business world, which makes it kind of more legitimate. It's a weird kind of dynamic, but it's a big get for PewDiePie. It's a big push for the legitimacy of creators. That's great. The actual I think it's a really interesting conversation for a lot of reasons, though. So first off, if I'm a person who is investing in Tesla or SpaceX or whatever, and I see the head of this company going on to Meme Review with PewDiePie, I don't know, and especially right now Tesla's in kind of a weird space where people are wow, you're underperforming and you're
weird hot water and stuff. There's not worth getting into it, but they're in some weird hot water, and so investors might not be super confident in Tesla right now to begin with, and then they're hey, you're showing up on this show of this guy who we talked about PewDiePie a lot last week.
No need to rehash.
He gets a bum rap. A lot, but you know, he has a controversial past, a legitimately controversial past, and like maybe investors wouldn't be that into seeing Elon like associating with this guy,
well,
right?
Especially when your company is kind of like being questioned for like, are they fudging numbers? How much at the wheel is Elon as heading this business? And so for him to take time out of his busy schedule, out of his day, to basically do some trolling online with this YouTuber, it's an odd look.
It's a little weird.
It's a little bit weird from an investor standpoint, but I think
but it is a big deal, and I think it, like, on the one hand, it is like pretty exciting.
The other weird part of it, though, right, is his response. So he goes out of his way to say, yes, PewDiePie, I accept your offer. I will host meme review alongside you. But then he doesn't
some weird responses.
do a good. Yeah, his responses aren't that great. First off, he like is just like, that's moderately funny to anything that relates to him, but he doesn't like add anything to it. His reactions are pretty lackluster, except for when he's presented with a picture of a dead deer in a pool, in which case he finds it the funniest thing of the entire video, which is alarming to me.
The backstory is that there's this meme, and it involves a picture of a deer who is drowned at a swimming pool. It's actually really I find it like pretty upsetting, but that's just because I love little deer and how they prance, and it's so cute. Anyway, but he finds this picture, like this image and this idea, like hilarious. And mind you, we've gone through like 5 or 6 memes with him so far at this point in the video, and he's had like very little reaction to any of them, even the ones about himself. Like, I was really excited for him to see memes about himself and then to like have funny commentary or like tell a story about it or add to it or something, like demonstrate like a personality or a sense of humor, and he doesn't really. And then we get to this like random dead deer meme, and he like loses it laughing. He's like it's hilarious. Oh my god! Like, he just keeps laughing about it, and you're like, oh, this is uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's not so much the fact that he laughs at that meme. It's the fact that that's the only one he responds to. And let me make it clear, right? Like, that meme, you can find it funny or not. It's more so that of any of them is the only one that he has a reaction to. And that was weird to me, especially when you also compare his reaction to that of Justin Roiland, who is co-creator of Rick and Morty, which is a dark show. It is a dark, sinister show where it covers really serious themes. There's a lot of there's
a lot of dark humor.
A lot of dark humor, a lot of death.
Like, that's great.
Rick and Morty, one of my favorite shows. I love talking about it on Film Theory. I love playing, the games, Squanch games. Like Accounting Plus. I think they're real. I think Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland are great. I think they're super talented. And even Justin Roiland, as he looks at that deer meme, he's like, wow, this is dark. Like, he doesn't find it funny. He's just like,
he's like, this is where we've gone to. Like, this is how dark the internet gets.
Yeah, this is pretty dark. Like, and meanwhile, Elon Musk is just cackling next to him.
Yeah, it's
weird. And again, it's just an odd thing, because you hear a lot about like top business people being sociopaths in a lot of cases, and I'm here. I am pulling my Shane Dawson. Like, Elon Musk a sociopath?
Don't do it.
No, but in all honesty, and this goes to the overall theme, I think, of today, right? Going back to even our house woes, where you have a lot of people who are willing to take advantage of other people and not feel a sense of empathy for what they're putting other people through, right? And you see this in the business world a lot, where just statistically speaking, a lot of top CEOs of companies, or a lot of the most successful people in the business world, rate as sociopaths to some extent, because in order to succeed in business, a lot of times you have to put down other people, right? You have to ignore the fact that other people, that you're making a choice between your success and someone else's, and always choosing your own success, right? To get ahead. Right, at the expense of other people in a lot of cases. And I think, it's interesting, because seeing the response of Elon Musk and him laughing at this thing, which, a lot of other people would find like, oh, that's kind of odd, or, that's not the most tasteful of memes or whatever. Yeah. Like, I think it put a lot of people on, watch, or kind of like, is he actually, is he a sociopath?
I'm not ready to make that call. So I'm putting my flag in the ground. I'm not ready to make that call. I think that's
on like a minute of meme review.
Yeah, that's not a fair rating for someone. But I do think it was a really odd reaction, and As someone, I guess I used to be like a kind of a fan of his, and personally, like over the last year, just his weird tweets, his like kind of going back and forth on like, is Tesla actually doing well? Is it not? He's got all these other weird projects going on. He seems to be like spread too thin. He's working on too many things. He seems to like not really always have it together, and then like maybe he's been lying about some stuff when in the business world. Like that hasn't really sat well with me. So I am definitely not willing to to go anywhere near saying that he's a sociopath.
Oh no, of course not.
But I will say that I used to be a fan of his, and now I'm kind of not.
Yeah, he didn't show himself off too well in, like, if you're gonna say yes to something, especially like the PewDiePie, like, you need to know what you're getting yourself into, which I'm not 100% sure he knew getting into it, like what he was really supposed to do. And then like he just didn't have the best showing.
Yeah.
It was kind of, for it being such a big thing and such a big moment and such a huge win for PewDiePie, like regardless of how Elon comes out of this, I think it's a big win for Pewds. But when it comes to Elon, he just didn't come out of it looking as good as I was hoping he would.
Yeah. I know. I think that sums it up perfectly.
Yep. So that anything else with
I think
the Pewds or Elon?
No, I think we're good. Is that our final segment?
No, I would say for a little last drop of tea, Steph.
Oh, a last drop.
Good to the last drop of tea here.
Let's have it.
Oscars. Did you have any thoughts?
Definitely benefited from not having a host. Definitely. And also poor Jennifer Hudson and how they let her sing that note so flat for so long. I felt so bad for her. It was not like that kind of thing. When that happens to a famous singer on stage, you cannot say things like, oh, she's a bad singer, or like, oh, she actually doesn't sing. No, when you're on a stage like that in front of that many people in that kind of auditorium, you actually can't hear yourself at all. And Jennifer Hudson sang a super flat note for a really long time during her Oscar performance, and I just felt so bad for her because I was like, she cannot hear a thing. She's holding that note so beautifully, and it is so flat.
Good to the last drop here of tea.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I don't know. I'm kind of burned out of the Oscars at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad to say because I used to really enjoy it. I used to really look forward to it. Obviously, we did multiple film theories, all like, how do you win an Oscar? What's your way to hack the Oscars? This and that. And I still enjoy it for that element, and I still enjoy watching the movies and trying to predict who the winners are. The problem is, though, at this point, it just, I don't know. And maybe it's just us being too close to the entertainment world at this point, us being exposed to Los Angeles culture for so long, this and that. But this idea of let's all dress up in super expensive attire and like congratulate ourselves. And especially, yeah. I think this year was especially weird because a lot of the movies that were nominated, either I didn't enjoy, I didn't think they were necessarily the best of the year.
Whoa.
I think Into the Spider-Verse winning, totally the right call.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I was glad to see that. But I don't know. I think this was an interesting year because it felt like the Oscars were trying to find a way to become popular again.
Yeah.
And it felt kind of desperate to me, and all the faux pas that they had going into it between, losing hosts and what awards are and aren't going to be showcased. They just made a lot of bad decisions, and so my enthusiasm for them, coupled with this kind of like weird mentality of like, we're all, good on us for being such artists this year. We are amazing,
Yeah, I know. Now that you've brought that up, I totally agree with that. And this is the kind of thing where I'll maybe finish off with this. We had a really interesting conversation with one of our friends a couple weeks ago where, he's a very good writer. And he was like, someday I'd really like to win an Emmy. And he was like, Matthew, wouldn't you like to win an award like that? And I thought your response was really good, so I'm just sort of patting you on the back a little bit. But
thank you.
I thought his response was really good because he was like, the more I watch of awards shows, and especially like awards that are given out in Hollywood, the more I understand how they're not really fulfilling. They're not meaningful. A lot of them are political. They're about who you know, or they're about just how like the Academy wants to make themselves look this year, which is to what you were saying about how they want to make themselves look popular again. And I really agree with that sentiment just overall of like people, it's like people who are already super, super rich, wearing super, super expensive clothes, going to a really fancy party where they get thousands and thousands of dollars of free gifts, and then talking all night about how great they are. It's like, I'm kind of over it.
Yeah, like that's the thing is, and it's funny that you bring up that conversation because it was true. I think at a point in my life when I was growing up, like I wanted to be an actor since I was in preschool, and that, you know, kind of evolved when I actually did theater, and I was an actor for a while, and I kind of realized what it would be. But the more I see of LA, the more I see of Hollywood, the more I realize how much of that whole industry is superficially propped up for its own good, right? You know, the fact that these red carpets are happening in front of the Sunglass Hut, that the after parties are happening in the back alley of like a liquor store as they go to like the fancy hotel, but you would never know that because the cameras do a good job of creating this illusion of success and wealth and whatever, and it perpetuates, right? And they're able to kind of like build this empire off of a lot of these,
and it makes people feel like that's
lives.
What they should want, or that they create this like standard of like, this is what you should want to be, this is what you should aspire to be, when like maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, and it's the original flex culture.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it really is. It's the original flex. Like, they're the supreme, only to like a much bigger level. And the thing is, like, I'm a big believer in hard work should get rewarded, talent should get rewarded. And like I love meritocracies, and that's one of the reasons why I especially loved YouTube in the early days, where it felt like, hey, if you work really, really hard, yeah, you know, you have a greater likelihood of making it than you would in like Hollywood, where it's all who you know, who you network with, this and that. And so as someone who works hard and strives to be as good as he can be at what he does, meritocracies make a lot of sense to me and resonate really well with me, because I think hard work is rewarded. And the more I see of Hollywood and award shows and this and that, the more I realize it's like, it's who you know, it's who you paid off, it's who your agent knows, it's you know, what marketing deal was handled in the background, this and that, in order to make sure that you got the nomination or you got the win. And that to me is sad. You know, like it's sad outside of all the political stuff that's going on with these award shows, outside of all the like self-aggrandizing that's going on with these award shows, even at its very core, like it doesn't even represent like these are truly the best movies. Like this is truly an award that means something. And that to me is the biggest loss of it. Is, well, actually it's not necessarily the biggest loss, but I think that to me removes kind of the last value that it had to me. Is this idea? One of the reasons
why we believe in YouTube so much is because we think it's more of a meritocracy, or much more of a meritocracy than like Hollywood, and you know that could change.
It has over the years. It's become less so.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still an open platform by and large, and so it's one of those things where one of the reasons why we love digital so much is because we really believe that it's a lot. It gives more people the opportunity to showcase and get rewarded for how talented they are, right? Without having all the gatekeepers. So that's I think that wraps it up. But I did want to call out the fact that in the chat, like there were definitely people who were like, I saw a lot of people who were like, I totally agree with you on the Oscars. But hey, on the Elon Musk stuff, I thought he was just being genuine. So like, I love the fact that like you guys are talking about it, and like there's a lot of debate going on. Please continue talking in the chat, in the comments, and we would love to see like where you guys netted out on some of these issues too, because not a lot of them are not clear cut, right? And these are like, it's our opinion and we like talking about this stuff, but we want to see like, are we on the level with like what other people think too?
Yeah. So anyway, that is our time for today. So thank you for joining us for episode 2 of TSeries, GTLive. The TSeries, where we're spilling the hot tea. Let us know next Tuesday, before next Tuesday, what topics you want us to cover.
Yeah.
Obviously, Shane Dawson was one that you guys requested a lot. The Elon Musk one was one that you guys requested a lot. So let us know over the course of the next week what we should be spilling the tea on next Tuesday.
I did see some comments about Devotion, which was on our list. We didn't get to it today, but maybe we'll be able to round it up and talk about it a little bit tomorrow. Devotion is the game that we're playing on GTLive. So,
and we're back.
And we are back with that tomorrow. Tomorrow?
I think Devotion. I think we had said Devotion is Thursday.
Devotion. Oh yeah, Devotion's Thursday. So if you want us to come see the end of that, make sure you do. And maybe we'll talk about it more then, because some of you also know like about some of the scandal that's happened around that game. Ooh, exciting. So we'll leave it on that cliffhanger, and we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll be playing Devotion on Thursday.
Yep. So we're back tomorrow with something new. That is 4:00 p.m. Pacific time. Back to the normal GTLive live streams, not a podcast, and then we're back to TSeries podcast next Tuesday, 4:00 p.m. Pacific. So hopefully you join us. And again, let us know. Again, this is only episode 2. So let us know if you like the format, what we should change, what we should keep the same.
We want all the feedback, so send it our way.
We want your feedback. Do you like the topic selection? Do you like the number of topics? How deep we're going, et cetera, et cetera. Because at the end of the day, we want this to be as enjoyable for you as possible. And in the meantime, I'm going to go sip my tea.
Ooh, and I'm going to say goodbye in the chat.
And by tea, I mean, I ran out of diet carbonated beverage.
Well, then you can join me saying goodbye in the chat.
I will. So anyway, remember, that is just a cast, a live podcast. Thank you so much for sipping the tea.
Naomi Gallick says bye in the chat.
Got to work on the closing line.
Right? We got to come up with something better. Ananda Miller says bye.
Christiana Underwood says, thank you guys. You're an amazing couple. Oh, thank you.
Thanks. Lucy Mulgrove says bye.
Quack Attack 24 says, I love this segment. It's so great to hear you talk about these topics. That is great to hear. Thank you.
Awesome. Pika Wolf says bye.